God, open our hearts and our minds to the reading and hearing of your word today. And may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts together be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. I might have mentioned last week, or I might have mentioned it in an email, weekly update, I can't remember, but we're entering into a smaller sermon series where I'm really using the lectionary, but we're not quite jiving directly with the weeks because of cantata last week, and then this lectionary passage that was meant for last week is actually really long, so I'm breaking it up into two. But I'm breaking it up because they're two sort of similar but different Easter encounters that the early disciples and followers of Jesus had with the risen Lord. And my hope is that with each one of these Easter encounters that we read, we find ways in which to go forth from this place, to move along from this place out into the world, being Christ in the world. That's the goal, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But here, this story from Luke 24, this picks up in the chapter right after the women have gone to the tomb and found it empty. Now that same day, two of them were going to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem, and talking with each other about all the things that had happened. While they were talking and discussing, Jesus himself came near and went with them. But their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And he said to them, "What are you discussing with each other while you walk along?" They stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, whose name was Cleopas, said, "Are you the only stranger in Jerusalem who does not know about the things that took place there in these days?" He said to them, "What things?" They said to him, "The things about Jesus of Nazareth, a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people, and how our chief priests and leaders handed him over to be condemned to death and crucified him. But we had hoped he was the one to redeem Israel. Yes, and besides this, it's now the 3rd day since all these things took place. Moreover, some of the women in our group astounded us. They were at the tomb early this morning, and when they did not find his body, they came back and told us that they had indeed seen a vision of angels who told them that he is alive. Some of those who were in our group went to the tomb and they found it, just as the women said, but they did not find him." Then he said to them, "Oh, how foolish you are, and how slow of heart to believe all that the prophets declared. Was it not necessary that the Messiah must suffer these things, then enter into his glory?" Then, beginning with Moses and the prophets, he interpreted for them all the things about himself in all the scriptures. As they came near to the village to which they were going, he walked ahead as if he were going on, but they urged him strongly, "Stay with us, because it's almost evening and the day is now nearly over." So he went in to stay with them. While he was at the table with them, he took bread, blessed it, broke it, and gave it to them. And their eyes were opened, and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight. Then they said to one another, were not our hearts burning within us while we were walking on the road, while he was opening the scriptures to us? That same hour they got up and returned to Jerusalem and found the 11 and their companions gathered together. They were saying, the Lord is risen indeed, and he has appeared to Simon. Then they told what had happened on the road and how he had been made known to them in the breaking of the bread. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Forward is a pace. Not 7 minutes, not 12 minutes, not 19 minutes. Forward is a pace. It's a mantra in the running community. It's one that Ashes and my running coach reminds us of on a weekly basis. Forward is a pace. What it implies is that standing still isn't really an option, and going back the other direction or going backwards isn't really an option. We are meant to move forward, one foot in front of the other, to just keep moving, to just keep going. It's become sort of a mantra with me in life. As life's on the Reeses and on Westminster Presbyterian and on the world, I think about the fish in Finding Nemo, Dory, who got popular for saying, just keep swimming, right? You just keep going when it gets tough. Today's story is one that has a lot of movement, and even in the middle of it has a moment of standing still. In the middle of these guys' walk to Emmaus, Jesus, who they had not yet recognized, stops them in their tracks with a simple question. What you talking about? Just that simple question. How often can one seemingly inane, ordinary question stop us when grief, life, confusion, anxiety is weighing down on us? So we're going to do what the disciples did. We're going to keep moving forward. We're going to move along. We're going to take this purposeful journey, pause when the story calls to pause, and go back even when the story calls us to go back. But we're going to keep moving forward. I had lots of questions as I started working on this text, and I decided when I wanted to break this up exactly where to break it up, because I wanted to get all of this particular part's movements in one message. And the first story, or the first question that I had was, who are these guys? Obviously, we're not told. We're told one of them's name is Cleopas, but we don't know who Cleopas is because he doesn't appear anywhere else. When I use this particular passage in the invitation to confession, I think we often assume it references some of the 11, but reading it in context, we recognize these two also aren't part of the inner circle, so to speak. The 12, now 11, because Judas did his thing and is no more included in that circle of disciples. So there again, we find ourselves looking sort of on the fringes of Jesus' ministry. We know they were in Jerusalem when the events happened. We know that they followed Jesus. We even know how they recognized Jesus while he was alive, as a prophet, mighty in deed and word before God and all the people. I think the main part of their identity for me that's important is where they sit in the story. But the question that really stumped me most of the week was, why does Luke say their eyes were kept from recognizing him? It's a clunky sentence that led me down a rabbit hole in the Greek that confused me even more because it doesn't make sense in the Greek. But there are a couple of things that are worth lifting up. First, the Greek implies that there is some strong external force that had hold of their vision, that had hold of them, that was seizing them. And then the other part of the sentence indicates that this caused them to not fully grasp, to not completely understand who Jesus was. So what was this external force? Was it grief? Was it their own blindedness? Was it a cosmological heavenly force? I think we have to be careful here. I think it's really easy to sit in our post-Easter seats and wonder how these guys who had followed Jesus probably for nearly 3 years would not recognize him. It's easy to consider them blinded by their own faults, whether that's grief or confusion or doubt or just, dare I say it, thick-headedness, which some of us have been accused of being. Being in the audience, we want to shout to Luke's characters that who they are describing is standing and walking with them, right? It's like when they say, you know, the things about Jesus of Nazareth. I just imagine Jesus going, yeah, tell me more about that. Tell me more about that guy. So we do better to handle or view or sit with Cleopas and his friends, not with judgment on their unrecognizing him, but with empathy because of what was going on in the Roman Empire at the time. It's not really that far-fetched based on the atrocious things the Roman government had been doing that a grave robbery might have taken place that would make Jesus' followers look ridiculous. It would make political sense. A resurrected dead man who may have appeared somewhat ghost-like doesn't make a whole lot of sense politically or otherwise. Perhaps, as they named for themselves, they lost hope. They had hoped that Jesus was the one to redeem Israel. But it seems they no longer think that. Maybe that sense of hopelessness, which is indeed a powerful force, kept their eyes shut. And yet, they move along. They keep talking, moving, and discussing. Cleopas relays everything, like I said, ironically, about Jesus to Jesus. And then Jesus, being Jesus, seems to have a little fun with them. He proclaims and interprets the scriptures about himself to them. And there's movement, both literal movement and emotional, metaphorical movement in the whole story. You know that in these verses alone, there are at least 10 different verbs that describe coming, going, moving, walking, or returning. So as they move along, quite literally, talking with Jesus, he proclaims and interprets scripture to them about himself. Moving through the story of God's people in word is what we do here. We approach the word proclaimed in prayer, praise, and hymn. We hear the word read and proclaimed, which is where we are now in this movement of worship. We move from the word proclaimed, ready to receive the sacrament when we have the sacraments. And then we move from the table, filled and renewed and refreshed, out into the world. Gathering for worship is a movement of both body and spirit. And this Emmaus journey demonstrates that beautifully. I need to offer a little bit of a caveat here. I do believe that we can experience God outside of the 11 o'clock hour on Sunday morning. Thanks be to God that we're not just experiencing God here. I'll tell you someday about mine and Ash's major God experience this week. But aside from all that, I know there are folks that enjoy virtual worship because for some reason or another they can't get here. So I'm not negating any of that with what I'm about to say. But there's something about getting here. Movement that has to happen to get us in this space that is holy and sacred. Some might even say sacramental, whether we actually celebrate baptism or communion or not. We're called, as our weeks move, one day ticking off the next, to move toward Sunday. And then, refreshed, renewed, empowered, maybe having a beautiful spiritual experience, we're called out, right? So move here, move into worship, move through this worship, and then move from this space. Back to our story. As the day comes to an end, Jesus walks ahead, like he's just going to keep going. Maybe he wanted to appear to more people. We don't know. I think Jesus is having a lot of fun with the disciples here, personally. I think we see the risen Lord's comical side coming out. And so he scoots on ahead. Maybe, like when you're waiting for someone to tell you to hang on a minute, he knows it's coming. And then something within them, that same type of force that kept their eyes open, kept their eyes closed, urges them to invite him to stay with them. Because it's dark and all, which will, it's not safe for them to travel after dark, but that becomes irrelevant at the end of the story. We know this too, don't we? This sense of wanting something to stay, wanting a person to stay with us, not wanting the current company to leave or go on ahead. Like you're on a first date with your future spouse and you just don't want it to end. Like you have an interview that goes really, really well and you look down and realize nearly 2 hours has passed. Like you see the time of your life, whatever it is, coming to an end, and you just want to linger there for a little bit longer. We know that, don't we? We know those emotions. So before they can think otherwise about this stranger, which Cleopas calls him, they invite him in. And then we have the sacramental Eucharistic act of Jesus breaking bread, blessing and breaking and giving. We know, because we don't know who they are, that they weren't the 11, so they probably weren't there in the upper room when the sacrament was instituted. Perhaps they had been with the gathering of the thousands and seen Jesus take loaves and fishes, bless and feed. Whatever it was, their eyes were open and they recognized him. Not only that, they know him and they now fully understand who it is that caused their hearts to burn within them while they were moving along. So when I say move along, I don't mean like I do on a treadmill with no real purpose. I mean move along with intention. Because the movement in Luke's story of the Emmaus journey and in the Easter encounters and in our own faith stories all have purpose. Sometimes there are small purposes that reveal themselves to us at just the right time. Sometimes it's the larger purpose to tell the story of Jesus, to interpret it, to have fellowship and communion with Jesus and others, and to share it with others. This is, in fact, what it means to be the church. Perhaps, too, the purpose is to hold on to hope, to not lose hope, to not find ourselves saying, we had hoped he was coming. We had hoped he would break in and fix this mess. We had hoped, insert your own thing there. But to allow our eyes to be opened, to fully realize and experience the risen Lord and the hope that comes with that in this moment, in this world, in this stuff of life. Move along. Move forward in hope toward the living Word, the risen Christ. Move toward the table of grace, and from there out into the world. But take note. Don't leave your hope on the steps of the sanctuary. As you enter the world and whatever the world is throwing at you next week, take the hope of Easter with you. Don't leave it on April 20th. That's the reason for doing this series, for staying with the Easter narratives all the way through the season of Easter, is that you carry the Easter story with you to give you hope, and you share it. Because hope is the quiet strength that carries us through uncertainty. It's not saying all things are great, it's all good. It's not the denial of hardship. We know that things can be hard. But the deep-rooted belief that something better is possible, even if we can't see it yet. I don't know if mom and dad are watching. They sometimes watch when they travel, but they're traveling, and you all know Dad's story and how he's been working towards a goal of weighing a certain number, and a week or so ago he had an appointment. And that appointment didn't go quite the way that he wanted it to go. And all week long since then, I've seen my mom posting things on Facebook that are encouraging all of us to not give up hope, to not stand still, but to keep moving. And indeed, they are. They're continuing to move. They're continuing to pray. They're continuing to hold out hope and to trust in the hope that comes from God alone. It's not easy, especially when you're looking towards something that seems impossible at times. But we know that hope reminds us, at some point, all things with God are possible. So move. Move out in hope, anchored in God's promises. I found a poem by Charles Naylor that I thought would be a great conclusion. It was published in 1926. I think it could speak to us at any time and in any space. When storms arise and shadows fall and prayers feel faint, if heard at all, still hope remains God's steady light, a beacon burning through the night. For every tear his hand will mend, his love endures, world without end. So hold to him, though seas may war, your anchor rests on heaven's shore. May we move along in faith and in hope, confident that we will one day fully and completely and totally see God's promises fulfilled.